Hi there. Thanks so much for tuning into A Breath of Fresh Air, where we dive into the stories behind the songs with the artists who made them. Right up front, I'm going to remind you to let me know if you have someone special you'd like to hear from. And if you could do me a favour of giving the show a rating or review on your favourite podcast platform, I'd be really grateful for that too. Today we feature a guy who's best known as the lead singer-bassist of the 80s Australian rock outfit, The Church. Steve Kilbey is also an accomplished solo artist and writer, whom I'm sure you're going to find kind of quirky and amusing. In fact, our conversation was derailed from the start with a discussion about what lay behind both of our last names. Not quite sure how that happened, but I decided to leave that in for you because it gives you a terrific sense of who Steve Kilbey is.
Sandy Kaye. Is that really your name, Kaye? Or is that, did you have a long, complicated European name which when your parents or grandparents arrived, they changed it to Kaye?
Have you already talked to me about this once before? Yes.
No.
I did.
That's how all Kays become Kays.
Really? They came from Eastern Europe and they changed it on the boat coming across.
Like Danny Kaye.
Yes, who I always said was my uncle until he was determined to be a pedophile.
Danny Kaye was a pedophile?
Absolutely.
Oh, no.
I know, it's terribly
disappointing.
Yeah. And was your name changed? Kilbey, or that's what it was?
No, that was... What would you change that
from?
What could it possibly... What, Kilbey Finkel or something?
Maybe.
No, it's always been Kilbey. But when I was a kid and I knew I was going to be hopefully one day famous, I did think about, could I get away with Steve Kaye? I like it better than Kilbey. Steve Kaye. I've thought a lot about names at school. I wanted to have a more common name. The fact that it's Kilbey and then I'd be Killer, and the fact that I wasn't very tough or a very good fighter added some real irony, as all the kids called me Killer Kilbey, yet I wasn't a killer at all. So I always wished I was Steve Brown or Steve Gray or Steve Kaye would have been good.
Wow, you've been a deep thinker since you were a child, huh?
I have. I've been thinking it all through ever since I could remember. You won't believe this. I walked into my parents' bedroom when I was 3 and I said, I've never known happiness. And they thought that was really funny, but it was a very heartfelt thing that I was saying. And I was freakishly precocious, you know.
As opposed to what you are now?
Well, at 70 you can say, I've never known happiness, and they go, oh, you poor old bugger. But, you know, when you're 3, they thought that was really funny. And then every time I would ever complain about anything, they would bring it up again. My mother didn't like having a precocious son. She wasn't used to it because we were living in peacetime. Suddenly all these children were coming through and they weren't, you do that. Why? Because I said so. And I'm like, why should I do what you say? And all the old rally. He's a very cheeky boy. You should discipline him. I questioned all of that. I hated all of that old guard. Yeah. I'm very precocious.
You certainly weren't the only one.
You like that too?
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about your whole career and a bit of personal stuff in there also.
Yeah.
You came to Australia from the UK at age 3 and you settled in Sydney. And is it true that you first got into music through Frank Sinatra and, of course, then the Beatles, Stones, Bolan and Bowie?
Yeah. Well, we were very, very poor. We arrived in Australia and my dad bought a little record player and we only had 2 records, and one of them was Frank Sinatra, Only the Lonely. And this record really appealed to me. And it was like the best torch songs, beautiful, beautiful songs of longing and unrequited love and breakup songs, beautifully orchestrated by Nelson Riddle. So the first songs that ever rushed into my head were these really well-written, very clever lyrical songs. Of course, the way Frank sang in his conversational manner, because before that, singers were like, whoa, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
And then Frank comes along and he sings like I sing, like, it's a lonely old town when you're not around. Like the way you would just talk. Yeah. It wasn't some big thing. That really influenced me. My dad was a musician and he was a piano player, not professionally, but he was a really good piano player. He encouraged me with music, told me music was very important. And we'd drive along in the car and the radio would play and he and I would talk about the songs that were playing, and he would go, "Come on, this is a stupid one, isn't it?" And I go, it was the age of My Friend, the Witch Doctor, and the Purple People Eater. My dad thought this was all pretty lowbrow and stupid, and he sort of influenced me in his own way. And then the Beatles came along, and I was 10 years old, 9 years old when I first saw them and heard about them. And it wasn't just the music, it was all the implications of the way the girls loved them, and the teenagers who were a few years older than me were besotted and obsessed by them and talking about them. And I just got sucked into the whole thing. And then when I was 11, my dad got me tickets to see the Easy Beats, who were Australia's biggest band. And I went along and saw them, and they just blew my mind. And I felt like it was my manifest destiny to be a pop star. I felt this was what I could do. I felt like I can do this. I can be this. I can't play anything. I haven't written anything yet. I was a very average-looking kid, but I felt like I can surely do this. When I was 16, after a lot of nagging, my dad, a voice in my head started going, "Buy a bass guitar. You've got to be a bass guitarist. You've got to be a bass guitarist." I nagged my dad into buying me a bass guitar, and I just practiced, taught myself. As much as I practiced, I looked at myself in the mirror. Wow, look at you in the mirror with playing that bass guitar. And I just inhaled music, and then I found all the magazines. I listened to the radio. I listened to shows that played esoteric music, and kept up with it. And I realized there was a lot more out there than just what they were playing on the local station. At 18, 19, started forming bands, being in bands, playing with bands. A few years later, I got a 4-track tape recorder, which were released for the first time. You could get a domestic tape recorder, like that you could do overdubs on. And I quit live music, and I just stayed home for 3 years making music with myself on a tape recorder.
What did your dad have to say about all this? Did he encourage you?
He died. Unfortunately, he died before I really got anywhere. He was dead by the time I got the tape recorder. I never let him come along and see me play because I was always waiting until it was going to be better.
Right. He obviously saw that you were heading in that direction of making a professional career out of it.
He completely, and he also went guarantor. See, okay, so I'm 19, I'm a bass player and a singer, so in those days I needed bass amp, I needed a bass guitar, I needed a PA, and I needed a microphone, and I needed a freaking car to drive it all around in. And my dad helped me get all of that.
Yeah. So in the early 70s, you were actually working as a bit of a computer programmer. You weren't doing this full time.
I was in the public service and in Canberra.
How that must have suited your personality.
It didn't. I was terrible. I was a terrible public servant. I never served the public at all. There was an import record shop, and I spent all of my money on import records. I had a huge record collection.
I'd completely forgotten the days of import record shops. Of course, we had that here because there was such a lag, and it was so difficult to get American and British releases in this country for a while.
It was, and not only that, if it did get released, it would be released with a single cover and an inferior pressing and a plastic sleeve instead of a paper sleeve. So say you bought a T-Rex record from England, it would come like in a double fold-out cover with pictures and lyrics and a bag. And in Australia, they just put out in this flimsy old thing. It could be a 3-month lag. And the powers that be in Australia would go, no, well, not going to release that, not going to release that, not going to release that. In fact, my parents went back to England one year, and I gave them a list of all the records I wanted them to get. And they walked around record shops in England buying me German and English records that you couldn't get in Australia.
Your first band was called Baby Grand?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Were others before that. Baby Grand was kind of the main thing. It wasn't very good. There is a record out there that someone put together of all our demos. You can actually find that. You can actually hear it.
I will.
It's pretty bloody awful. The record was mastered from cassettes that had been sitting in someone's drawer for 40 years. I was still computer programming, or that's what I was supposed to be doing. And Baby Graham would sometimes play at night. Then I left Canberra and threw in the job, and I moved up to Sydney. I was silk screening T-shirts and selling them at Paddington Market, and then at night I was getting the church together, and I decided I couldn't have a day job anymore. I had to give everything to music.
And you did.
That was a good decision.
Yeah.
People who hedge their bets, it can be fatal. If you've got a good job but you have some musical talent, you feel like you should be a musician, you got to chuck the job in. But, you know, there's the boulevard of broken dreams of people who chucked their job in and then still didn't make it as musicians. It's sort of tragic.
But what you're saying is if your calling is strong enough and you believe in yourself enough, then you really need to go full forward with it.
Look, I didn't have a belief. I had a conviction. I had total conviction that this was going to happen for me. I don't know why. It wasn't really justified by anything. Despite all the years of nobody liking anything I did, I still convinced that one day I would find my place and everybody would like it. So it wasn't just sort of faith. It was more than that. It was like I don't know, manifest destiny, I would call it. When I meet young guys occasionally, I say, do you believe, do you really feel that you are going to be a rock and roll star? And if they say, oh, no, not really, I go, don't do it then. Yeah. You know, you've got to really, because this belief, this faith, and more than that, got to get you through some really hard times.
You had plenty of those because you did go through years of rejection. Nobody wanted your music for quite a while, did they?
No. So when I got my first bass guitar, I was 16. And when the church appeared on Countdown, I was 26. And so there was 10 years of, in those 10 years, not one person liked one single thing I did.
Wow. So what was different about the church? Tell me about putting that together. And I want to know also why you called it the church.
I just had a list of names and everybody thought the church was okay. There's no, I like the feeling of there's something spiritual going on here. And everybody went, yeah, okay, let's call it the church. What was different about the church? We were in Sydney. You can't make it from Canberra. That was a half-assed idea. I will hang on to my job and live in Canberra where it's safe and warm and comfortable and try and make it here and make it in Sydney and Melbourne. No, that didn't work out. So I committed and I moved to Sydney. And we popped up at the right time. I reconnected with Peter Koppes, who was the lead guitarist in the church, who had been in Baby Grand a bit. He was in an earlier version of Baby Grand. So we already knew each other. And between me last seeing him, I had bought the 4-track and I met him at the markets and he was playing in a kind of a semi-successful band in Sydney. I said, come around here what I'm doing. He came round and there's a real difference between if you get a bunch of people and you sit down with an acoustic guitar and I've got this song and you play it, they're like, They'd put a tape on where the song is fully arranged and all the guitars and bass and the drum machines playing and all the vocals and keyboards, and you put this and that on it, which I did. So my demos by this stage were quite superior. And when he sat down and heard what this could be like, he said, yeah, let's do this. And then he and I made some demos together and it sounded even better with him playing guitar. He was a much better guitarist than me. We met Marty Wilson Piper. We had a real ratbag who was a drummer. He made things hard, but we kicked him out. The first guy who heard our tape signed us up, and we got a deal with ATV Northern Songs, and he got us a deal with EMI. Our first single was a complete flop. Meanwhile, we were playing every freaking night in Sydney, and sometimes Melbourne, sometimes Brisbane. We were going up and down the highway, playing every show we could. We were getting better and better. We suddenly got this drummer from Adelaide who was 18 when we kicked the old drummer out for being a rat bag. We got this 18-year-old guy and he was so full of energy and such a joker, Richard Plug. And then we got on Countdown. It was literally rags to riches. It was like the Friday night before Countdown, Nobby at our show. The Monday night after Countdown, we played a gig in Melbourne at the Prospect Hill Hotel in Kew. There were 900 people there. Wow. And sort of girls screaming and blokes shaking your hand and managers giving you money and snorting speed.
It was a very fertile time for live music then, wasn't it? And Countdown was the equivalent of the UK's Top of the Pops. So if you got onto Countdown, as you said, you exploded.
Sometimes, not always. There were bands that got on Countdown that didn't explode, and you usually only got one chance. And I've been watching this. There were bands that you'd heard of, and they'd get on Countdown, it wasn't the right song, or Countdown didn't film them the right way,
Right.
or something kind of went wrong and it was all lackluster. Somehow, there we were, we had the haircuts, we had the mascara, we had this great backdrop that was supposed to look like a church, but it didn't. It was sort of like psychedelic. And there we were with our cheekbones and all of this, and bang, people freaking loved it. And not only that, we were a huge threat to all the other bands, all the established bands, because we were better looking than all of them and younger and groovier. It was just marvelous. It might not have been marvelous. Still, with all of that, we could have gone on. There was a video that we canned that a guy made, and it was a terrible video. He was trying to make us sort of look like Queen, all in a row, going and all you, and that was so bad. And I could see how easy it all could have gone wrong. But luckily for us, that performance on Countdown, the girls screamed, the lights looked good, we all looked good, and that was it. And we never looked back. Rags to riches.
It's the early 80s at this stage. Yeah. You talk about your competition in established bands around Australia at the time. How would you describe the music, and who were your competition?
The only Australian band I liked was Flowers. I thought Ivor Davies was amazing. And I'm sorry to say this, but Rose Tattoo, Akka Daka, The Angels, Chisel, all of them, I didn't care for. That shouldn't be like heresy. I mean, even saying it now, I go, oh my God, the people are going to be angry with me. Say, I didn't like it. I didn't like all that stuff. I didn't like that.
The music had so changed from the 70s and all this hard-edged, punky sort of music that didn't seem to be what you were about either.
It wasn't. It was pub rock. It was like about alcohol. Yeah, I was about marijuana.
Yeah.
I was about, and it's very important, there's a big distinction. Yeah. My stuff was set in a European city in the middle of winter at night. I was walking down a snowy street with a Belle Dame Sans Merci. You know what I mean? I'm not fixing a ute in Oodnadatta.
Yeah, right.
I'm in Cologne.
Yeah.
And the bands are kind of a European band, and we have these literary allusions to whatever it was all creeping in all the time, singing about dreams and ambiguity and all of this kind of business. And the bands at the time, they weren't like that. It was like Aussie rock and roll, right. Drink beer, suck more piss. But I enjoyed, except for Ivor, who was like Australia's David Bowie. But I enjoyed that. It gave me something to react against.
You had a massive point of difference. I mean, that first hit single, The Unguarded Moment, reached number 22 here. It went gold. How did you feel when that happened? Tell me a little bit about that song.
It was just written accidentally. Wasn't trying to write a hit. It could have been any song, really. But they all kind of sounded the same at that stage. It was great. It was great to have a hit. Not my favourite song, wasn't then, still isn't. But, it's churlish to lash out against the song that gave you your success and go, I don't really like it. But that would be a very typical Kilbey thing to do. It was great. It was great times. It was great to be a pop star. It was all that I wanted.
Well, you had the music, you had the girls chasing after you and trying to follow you everywhere. What was the unguarded moment? Was there an unguarded moment?
I don't bloody know. Just a
You were
song,
just
isn't
stoned.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Lis-
So
Okay.
Unguarded Moment came out and you started touring around everywhere. You were getting a lot of compliments and a lot of people drawing comparisons to bands like the Byrds. I think especially because of Marty's use of the 12-string Rickenbacker guitar that was similar to Roger McGuinn's, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, the Birds, that was just an accidental thing. We never, when people started saying the Birds, then we went, oh, yeah, we're a bit like the Birds, but it wasn't like an intentional thing.
So what was your intention?
It was sort of like my intent. But see, all the other guys had different intentions, and that's what's great thing about band. My intention was David Bowie and Mark Bolan, and then a load of other things behind them, like the Beatles and the Stones and Dylan and prog rock, believe it or not. And but Peter Coppers, he was a big fan of Jimi Hendrix, and he liked the blues and guitar solos and stuff. And Marty was a big fan of prog, and Marty was in a very malleable state when he joined. He hadn't really he was the biggest listener out of all the people in the band, but he hadn't really found his own voice on guitar, where Peter had already figured out. And so one day we're in the studio, and the producer came in and said, "Look, I've got you a 12-string guitar," and he started playing it, and then people said, "Oh, that's a bit like the Byrds," and then, oh, cool. And then obviously we had all heard the Byrds before, but we started listening to the Byrds more, and we upped the Byrds quotient a bit. Right. Although the vocals are nothing like the Byrds, like the harmonies in the Byrds and stuff. So, you know, we sort of emphasized that a bit. The band was a huge hodgepodge and melting pot of thousands of different ideas, and I would take the best bits of everything I found, everything I heard and saw, not only music, but books and films and everything, all ended up in the songs.
And you were the main songwriter, weren't you?
Yeah.
Despite the obvious comparisons with the Byrds, the Church's double lead guitar sound also touched on 60s psychedelia and moody post-punk, and even found Steve Kilbey weaving in elements of poetic mysticism with his lyrics. It was a sound the group would champion over 4 more albums, all of which reached the top 20 on the Australian charts and helped build a core fan base in the United States. Away from the Church, Steve Kilbey made his solo debut in 1986 with the album Unearthed. Recorded at his home in Sydney, it was somewhat looser than his work with his band at the time, and found him utilising a drum machine and overlaying guitar and keyboard parts. Nonetheless, it had a folky, surrealistic charm that prefigured much of the singer's future projects.
I didn't go solo. I made a solo album because I couldn't be constrained. My creativity couldn't be constrained by a band that only released an album once every blue moon. And I was doing things at home, as I had been for a long time now, on my tape recorder that I really liked. And the band didn't want to take part in. And there was, if you listen to my first solo album, there's a lot of synthesizer and drum machines and sort of things that the Church wouldn't do. I still have multiple collaborations and multiple things out there. I make so much music that one band can't possibly have it all. But the Church is always my flagship. Right. The Church is always the most important thing. But it's like, if you want to dive deeper behind the Church, then you could listen to my solo albums and my collaborations with other people,
which were all very successful. I mean, you say the Church didn't put out many albums. By 1988, you'd put out your 7th album called Starfish.
That's right.
And that one was produced by Waddy Wachtel. Is that how you pronounce it? Wachtel, thank you. As well.
Yeah.
By Waddy Wachtel, who had been with Fleetwood Mac, Randy Newman, James Taylor. And that produced the single Under the Milky Way. Did you like that one? The
album?
Well, yeah, both.
Yeah, I thought it all worked out well. It's like a funny thing. It all worked out well for the wrong reasons. It wasn't really a marriage made in heaven working with him. He was trying to go one way, we were trying to go to the other, and accidentally in the middle came Under the Milky Way. sort of came out of it. So it was good, but it hadn't been planned to be that way.
Right.
But it was just a very lucky accident that's how it ended up.
Well, it ended up pretty well for you. It was top 10 here
Yeah.
in Australia and top 50 in the US.
Yeah.
It's still your biggest hit, isn't it?
Oh, totally. It's big. I did an interview the other day and someone said, I hope you don't mind me saying this. Under the Milky Way is bigger than the church. Your song is bigger than you. And I said, that's true. It is. People know that song that don't even know me. And you would not, I challenge you to listen to all the cover versions on YouTube. There's like 1,000 different people on YouTube doing it. It's been used in movies, it's been used in car ads, it's been used in tourism ads, been used in TV shows. Everybody's had a go at it. And it's bigger than me. It's bigger than the band. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. I wish I had 10 songs like that. I wish I had 10 songs that were as big and as famous as... You look at the Beatles, they had like 50 of those.
Yeah. But
I've only got one. But
do you keep trying for the next one? The next big one?
Oh, it's too late. Yes, the band, we can't have a hit single now. You don't have hit singles in your 70s. You know, it just doesn't happen. But yeah, we tried to have more hit singles. Metropolis, which came on the next album, was a kind of a minorish hit.
Okay, so the band keeps working. You keep putting out album after album. And in 2014, you decide to publish your own autobiography called Something Quite Peculiar. Love the title.
Yeah. I did it for the money. They offered me, I don't know, 20 grand. Hey, write your memoirs. Note, it's my memoirs, not my autobiography. I wouldn't have known the difference between those two things. Now I
don't think I do.
No, there is a kind of a difference. Your autobiography is like, I know,
a cleaned up version.
No, it's more deeply philosophical and like the whole history of everything from the beginning up until where you are. Whereas my memoirs were just like some sort of the highlights of sort of some good and stupid things that I got up to. You know, then I dated this girl, and then I took this drug, and then I appeared on this TV show, and then I blah blah blah.
It sounds far more interesting, actually.
Yeah, memoirs. Yeah, but definitely there definitely is a difference between memoirs and autobiographies.
Well, I found myself needing to check this out further, and upon investigation, discovered, as Steve had rightly pointed to, that an autobiography provides a factual, chronological account of the author's entire life, covering major events and themes. A memoir, by contrast, focuses on a specific period, theme, or set of experiences within the author's life, prioritising emotional truth, personal reflection, and the subjective experience of those events. The primary difference is the slice of life versus the whole pie. Where an autobiography is the entire pie, the memoir is a slice, a focused exploration of a single event or theme within that life. I haven't read Steve's book, Something Quite Peculiar, but I'm going to make a point of doing just that.
I did it for the money.
I love your honesty.
Yeah.
And I love your music too, because you're up to your 25th studio album, Man, Woman, Life, Death, Infinity. How profound, in 2017. And you still kept working, doing your own solo stuff as well. So there's never been a time where you've actually stopped making music, or not to date, right?
No.
And loving it.
No. I have to keep going all the time.
Or what will happen?
I would sort of explode. I'd be really unfulfilled. Because I'm just as creative now as I ever was, and I'm working with I've got all these different collaborators now. I've like all these, it's me and Martin Kennedy, me and Gareth Koch, me and the Winged Heels, me and Speed of the Stars, me just on my own.
Do you have one favourite song?
One favourite song?
Yeah.
No.
Good.
It's too many.
No. And it's like picking between children. I get that.
Yeah, if you've got 1,500 children,
you may well have Steve Kilbey for all we know.
I could do.
from the life that you've led, for sure. But I do want to talk to you about this tour that you're undertaking with the church. You're heading off to America. You're heading into Australia later this year. It's called the Singles Tour, and it's the first time that the church has ever played a show in this kind of format.
It is.
Tell me a little bit about that.
It just seemed like a good idea. It seemed like that's what everybody wanted. I've got a very good friend who's a promoter, and he said, Steve, let's do the single show. You know, like, what are you waiting for? He said, I guarantee it's just people are going to want it. And I thought, yeah, you know.
Why not?
There used to be a show, and it was all because you asked for it. And so that's what I say to myself. I'm doing it because people want me to do it, and they want to hear all these songs together. And it's about bloody time. I've been doing a lot of esoteric navel gazing in my life, and that's good, but it's time to,
hold your head up.
Pull on the grease paint and go out there and do the single show. And I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, there are so many hit singles. You must have a favourite of those. Which one do you like playing most?
Well, have you heard Ripple?
I haven't.
Okay, it's on Priest Equals Aura. It's a really good song. I really enjoy playing that one.
Steve seems to have lost count of the number of albums he's released on his own. I make it around 20. As he mentioned, he's been doing lots of collaborations over recent years, the latest of which is an album called The Road to Tibooburra. It's the second album by the band The Winged Heels, which features Steve on vocals, 12-string guitar, electric guitar and bass. If you're interested in catching the church with Steve Kilbey in concert, many of the Australian dates are already sold out. There are a couple of new shows available for late 2025, early 2026, and Steve is excited that the US tour is now set to take place in the summer of next year. I'll let you go, Steve Kilbey. I think we've beaten the battery on your phone.
Oh, thank you, Sandy. It's been a real pleasure.
And you too.
And any time again, I'd love to do more in-depth talk with you, for
awesome.
sure.
Sounds good to me. Lots of love to you. Bye, Steve.
Bye, Sandy.